The wreckage still smoked when Adrian Cole pulled himself from the twisted metal of the cargo hauler. His ears rang from the impact, and blood trickled down his temple where a piece of shrapnel had grazed him. The twin suns of this unnamed world blazed overhead, turning the desert landscape into a furnace of red sand and jagged obsidian formations. He wasn't supposed to be here. Adrian was an engineer, not a soldier. His job was maintaining the atmospheric processors on mining vessels, not surviving crashes on hostile alien worlds. The distress beacon on his suit blinked uselessly. The hauler's main transmitter was scattered across half a kilometer of desert. Adrian surveyed the damage, his trained eye cataloging salvageable parts. The cargo bay had split open like a ripe fruit, spilling containers across the sand. Most held mining equipment bound for the outer colonies. Nothing that would help him survive here. A glint of metal caught his attention among the debris. Not from the ship, the color was wrong. This metal seemed to drink in the harsh sunlight rather than reflect it. Adrian approached cautiously, his boots crunching on the crystalline sand. It was a sword. But calling it merely a sword felt like calling a fusion reactor merely a battery. The blade was impossibly black, seeming to bend light around its edges. Strange symbols ran along its length, pulsing with a faint inner light that made his eyes water to look at directly. The hilt was wrapped in what looked like scales from some massive creature, and the pommel held a stone that shifted colors like oil on water. Adrian's first thought was practical. This thing might be worth something. Alien artifacts fetched high prices on the gray market. His second thought was more cautious. Someone had packed this in secret cargo. Someone who clearly didn't want it found by customs. He reached for his emergency kit instead, pulling out a collapsible shelter and water purifier. Survival first, treasure hunting later. But as he worked to set up a basic camp, his eyes kept drifting back to the sword. It lay there in the sand like a sleeping predator, beautiful and threatening in equal measure. The attack came at sunset. Adrian had just managed to jury-rig a weak distress signal from salvage parts when he heard them, a low thrumming that seemed to come from the sand itself. He looked up to see figures emerging from behind the obsidian formations. They moved with inhuman grace, their bodies covered in form-fitting armor that shifted colors to match their surroundings. The Velari. Adrian had heard stories about them in spaceport bars. Desert nomads who had never been conquered, not even by the Terran colonial forces. They were said to move like ghosts and fight like demons. The stories hadn't mentioned how tall they were. Each warrior stood at least 7 feet, with elongated limbs that suggested a lower gravity evolution. They formed a circle around his makeshift camp, energy spears humming with barely contained power. Adrian raised his hand slowly, trying to remember the universal gestures for "I come in peace" and "Please don't turn me into charcoal." One of them stepped forward, and Adrian realized with a start that this was a woman. Her armor was more ornate than the others, with flowing script etched into the metal. When she removed her helmet, Adrian saw a face that was almost human, if humans had skin the color of burnished copper, and eyes that glowed amber in the dying light. She spoke in a language that sounded like wind chimes, caught in a thunderstorm. Adrian shook his head, tapping his universal translator. It sputtered and gave him fragments. Trespasser, sacred ground, death. Not encouraging. The warrior woman gestured sharply at his camp, then at the scattered cargo. Her eyes scanned the wreckage with the efficiency of someone used to battlefield assessment. Then she saw the sword. The change was instant and terrifying. Every warrior dropped to one knee in perfect synchronization, heads bowed. The woman's amber eyes went wide with something Adrian couldn't identify: fear, awe, religious ecstasy. She spoke again, and this time the translator managed better. "The Queen's blade. Here. After so long." Adrian followed her gaze to the sword. "That old thing, look. If it's yours, take it. I just want to get off this rock alive." The woman, clearly some kind of commander, approached the sword with reverence. She circled it twice, making gestures that looked ritualistic. Then she turned back to Adrian, with an expression that made his blood run cold. "You have touched it," she said in accented but clear English. "Show me your hands." "I haven't touched anything," Adrian protested. "I've been too busy trying not to die." She moved faster than his eyes could track. One moment, she was 3 meters away. The next, she had his wrists in an iron grip. She examined his palms with intense scrutiny, then released him, with what sounded like a sigh of relief. "The mark is not there. You are fortunate, human." She gestured to her warriors. "We will take the blade to the queen. You will come as well." "Now wait a minute." "You will come," she repeated, "or you will remain here, permanently." Adrian looked at the circle of energy spears, then at the endless desert beyond. "You know what I've always wanted to meet royalty." The journey to their city took 3 days through terrain that seemed designed to kill unprepared travelers. The Velari moved across the desert like it was their personal highway, their long legs eating up distance, while Adrian struggled to keep pace. They gave him water and a cloth to wrap around his head against the sun, but made it clear he was somewhere between guest and prisoner. The commander, who introduced herself as Kaya, rode beside him on something that looked like a cross between a motorcycle and a living creature. It skimmed across the sand on appendages that might have been mechanical or biological. Adrian couldn't tell. "Your people should not be here," Kaya said on the second day. "This system is interdicted. Tell that to my cheap-ass captain who took a shortcut through restricted space." Adrian replied, wiping sweat from his eyes. "I'm just an engineer. I fix things. I don't make route decisions." Kaya studied him with those unnerving amber eyes. "An engineer? A builder? Perhaps that is why." "Why what?" She didn't answer. Returning her attention to the horizon, where the first spires of their city were becoming visible. The city took Adrian's breath away. It rose from the desert like a fever dream of organic architecture and impossible geometry. Towers twisted skyward in helical spirals, connected by bridges that looked too delicate to support their own weight. The entire structure seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal that caught and refracted the sunlight into a million dancing rainbows. "Welcome to Cartheta," Kaya said. "The Eternal City, home of the Queen and heart of the Velari people." As they approached the main gates, which looked more grown than built, Adrian noticed the change in the warriors around him. They sat straighter, moved with more precision. Whatever else the Queen was, she clearly inspired both loyalty and fear in her subjects. The sword had been wrapped in what looked like ceremonial cloth and placed in a containment field that hummed with energy. 4 warriors carried it between them like it might explode at any moment. They passed through markets where aliens haggled over goods Adrian couldn't identify, past fountains that defied gravity, through crowds that parted before them like water. Everyone who saw the wrapped bundle carried by the warriors fell silent. Some bowed, others made warding gestures. "The Queen's blade has been lost for a generation," Kaya explained, noticing his curiosity. "Its return is significant." "Significant how?" "You will see." The palace or temple, or whatever it was, sat at the city's heart. It was smaller than Adrian expected, but radiated a presence that made the air itself feel heavier. Guards in elaborate armor flanked the entrance, their weapons more ceremonial than practical, but still clearly lethal. Inside, the corridors were lit by phosphorescent panels that responded to their presence, growing brighter as they passed. The walls were covered in murals depicting what Adrian assumed was Velari history battles and celebrations, tragedies and triumphs, all rendered in a style that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at it. Finally, they reached a vast circular chamber. At its center sat a throne that looked carved from a single, massive gem. And on that throne, Adrian had expected someone old. The title Queen conjured images of ancient matriarchs weighed down by centuries of rule. But the woman on the throne couldn't have been more than 30 in human years. She was tall, even for a Veilari, with the same copper skin and amber eyes. But there was something else about her equality that made the air around her shimmer, like heat waves off desert sand. "My queen," Kaya said, dropping to one knee. The other warriors followed suit. Adrian remained standing, which earned him several hostile looks. The Queen Solara, as she would later introduce herself, rose from her throne with fluid grace. She wore robes that seemed to be cut from the night sky itself, complete with slowly moving points of light that might have been stars. Her eyes fixed on the wrapped bundle, and Adrian saw her hands tremble slightly. "Is it true?" Her voice was music and thunder combined. "Has the blade returned?" "It has majesty," Kaya confirmed, "found in the wreckage of a human vessel." Solara's gaze shifted to Adrian, and he felt like he was being X-rayed. "And this is the human who found it." "I didn't exactly find it," Adrian said, figuring honesty might keep him alive longer. "It was in our cargo. Secret manifest. I was just trying to salvage survival supplies when your people showed up. Yet you did not touch it." "Lady, I'm an engineer. I don't touch strange alien artifacts that glow. That's how you end up dead or worse." Something that might have been amusement flickered across her perfect features. Wise. Yet, here you are. She descended from the throne, each step deliberate and graceful. "Do you know what this blade is?" "Your Majesty's letter opener." Several warriors hissed at what they clearly considered blasphemy. But Solara actually smiled, the expression that transformed her from distant royalty to something almost approachable. "Humor. How refreshingly human." She gestured, and the warriors unwrapped the sword. Even in the phosphorescent light of the throne room, it seemed to radiate darkness. "This is the Queen's blade. For 1,000 years, it has chosen the ruler of the Veilari, passed from queen to queen, each one marked by its touch." "Marked, the blade chooses. When one of royal blood takes it up, it brands them. Here." She held up her right hand, showing a pattern of scars that looked like circuitry made of starlight. "The mark of legitimate rule, proof that the blade has judged and found worthy. So it's like a really aggressive coronation ceremony." "More than that." Solara circled the blade where it lay on its wrappings. "The blade is alive, after a fashion. It remembers every queen who has wielded it. Their wisdom, their strength, their failures all preserved." Her expression darkened. "It was lost 20 years ago when my mother's ship was attacked by raiders. We thought it destroyed. And now it's back," Adrian said. "That's good, right? Everyone seems pretty excited about it." "That depends," a new voice interrupted. "On what the blade decides." Adrian turned to see a Veilari male entering the chamber, where Solara was grace and controlled power. This man was all sharp edges and barely leashed violence. His armor was functional rather than ceremonial, scarred from actual combat. When he looked at Adrian, his expression suggested he was calculating how many pieces he could cut him into. "General Kale," Solara said, and Adrian heard warning in her tone. "You were not summoned." "Forgive me, Majesty." Kale's bow was perfunctory. "But when I heard the blade had returned, and in the hands of a human..." He let the implications hang. "The human has not touched it," Kaya said firmly. "So he claims." Kale's eyes never left Adrian. "But humans lie. It is their nature." "That's racist," Adrian said. "Also, factually wrong. We only lie about 60% of the time. 70 tops." Kale's hand went to his weapon, but Solara's voice cracked like a whip. "Enough. The blade is here. That is what matters." She looked at Adrian. "Though the general raises a point, the blade must be verified, its power confirmed." "Can't you just pick it up?" Adrian asked. "You've got the marks already." The marks fade when a queen dies. The blade must choose anew. Solara's expression was unreadable. And there are complications. Before Adrian could ask what kind of complications, Kale stepped forward. Allow me, Majesty. I will take up the blade and prove its authenticity. If it is false, we will know. If it is real, he smiled, showing too many teeth. Then we will see who it judges worthy. The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches. Adrian might not understand Velari politics, but he recognized a power play when he saw one. The blade chooses royalty, Solara said carefully. You are of noble blood, Kyle, but not royal. Laws can be changed. Bloodlines. Reinterpreted. Kale was already moving toward the sword. Unless your Majesty fears what the blade might decide, it was a trap, Adrian realized. If Solara tried to stop him, she'd look weak. If she let him try and the blade accepted him, she'd face a legitimate challenge to her rule. And if the blade killed him, well, that would solve one problem but create others. Wait, Adrian said, surprising himself. There's something you should know. Everyone turned to look at him. Kale's expression was murderous, but Adrian pressed on. That sword was in secret cargo. Black market stuff. What if it's not the real thing? What if someone made a copy to sell to collectors? He was making this up as he went, but it sounded plausible. You could be fighting over a fake. Seems like you should test it somehow before anyone important touches it. And how would you suggest we test it? Solara asked, and Adrian thought he heard gratitude beneath the neutral tone. Well, Adrian looked around the room, then at the sword, then made a decision he'd probably regret. You need someone expendable, someone with no claim to the throne, someone whose death wouldn't cause a political crisis. Understanding dawned in Solara's eyes. No. Hey, I'm not planning to die, Adrian said, stepping toward the sword. But if this thing is going to kill someone, better me than someone who actually matters here. The human makes sense, Kale said, and his smile was predatory. Let him prove his innocence. If he has not touched the blade as he claims, it will not recognize him. He will be unmarked, and we can proceed. Adrian realized he'd just volunteered for an alien lie detector test that might kill him. But the alternative was watching Kale potentially usurp the throne of someone who, despite having him kidnapped, seemed like a decent ruler. Fine, he said, kneeling beside the sword. How does this work? Do I just grab it? Or is there a magic word? The blade knows intent, Solara said softly. Take it up with the purpose of returning it to its rightful owner. Think of nothing else. Adrian looked at the sword. Really looked at it. Up close. He could see that the symbols along the blade weren't just decorative. They moved, flowing like living text in a language that hurt to perceive directly. The wrapped hilt seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. This is stupid, he thought. I'm an engineer. I fix air recyclers and gravitational compensators. I don't touch magic alien swords. But he reached out anyway. The moment his fingers brushed the hilt, the world exploded into fire. Pain shot up his arm like molten metal in his veins. The throne room vanished, replaced by a kaleidoscope of images that crashed into his mind with the force of a stellar collision. He saw queens long dead, wielding the blade in battle, saw the forging of it in the heart of a dying star, saw prophecies written in languages that predated human evolution. And through it all, a presence, ancient, alien, analyzing him with the cold precision of a quantum computer and the burning intensity of a living star. Unworthy, it decided, weak, small, human. I know, Adrian thought back through the agony. I'm not trying to rule. I'm trying to return you. The presence paused. In that heartbeat of hesitation, Adrian felt it rifle through his memories. His childhood on Mars Colony, his apprenticeship in the engineering guild, the satisfaction of fixing something broken, The simple joy of making things work. Interesting. The pain intensified. Adrian smelled burning flesh and realized it was his own. His hand was on fire, no. The sword was branding him. He tried to let go but couldn't. The blade wouldn't let him. Then, suddenly, it was over. Adrian found himself on his knees, cradling his right hand against his chest. The throne room reformed around him, but everything seemed different, sharper, more real. Like he'd been looking at the world through dirty glass his whole life, and someone had finally cleaned it. "Impossible," someone whispered. Adrian looked at his hand. The palm was covered in the same circuit-like scars that decorated Solara's hand. But there was a difference. Where hers were silver white, his were deep red, still glowing with inner heat. He looked up to find every Velari in the room on their knees, even Kale, his face a mask of horror and rage. "This cannot be," the general snarled. "A human cannot bear the mark. The prophecies." "The prophecies speak of the returned blade," Solara said, and her voice was strange. "Of the one who would bring it home after it was lost. They never said that one would be Velari." Adrian struggled to his feet, still clutching his burned hand. "I don't suppose anyone has some alien burn cream. This really hurts." "You bear the mark," Solara said, approaching him slowly. "The blade has chosen you. That makes you—" "Dead," Kyle interrupted, rising despite the taboo of standing while others knelt. "It makes him dead. I will not accept a human as—" "You will accept the blade's judgment," Solara said, and now her voice carried steel. "As we all must." "I don't want to rule anyone," Adrian said quickly. "I just want to go home. Can't we call this a cultural misunderstanding and—" The sword pulsed on the floor where he'd dropped it. Everyone in the room felt it, a wave of command that bypassed conscious thought and spoke directly to instinct. Adrian found himself picking up the blade without meaning to. This time, there was no pain. The sword felt light as air in his grip, perfectly balanced. The symbols along the blade glowed brighter, and Adrian realized with a sick feeling that he could read them now. "The Blade of Queens," he read aloud, the alien words feeling strange on his tongue. "Forged in starfire, cooled in the tears of gods. Let she who bears it carry the weight of all who came before." "She," Kale said triumphantly. "The blade is meant for a woman. This proves—" The sword pulsed again, and Kale's words died. Adrian felt knowledge flow into his mind, unwanted and undeniable. "The blade doesn't care about gender," he said, hating that he knew this. "It cares about purpose, about connection." He looked at Solara. "It remembers you, your mother, your grandmother, all of them," stretching back. He paused, trying to process what the sword was telling him. "But there's something wrong. A break in the chain." "My mother died without passing the blade on," Solara said quietly. "The succession was incomplete. That's why it marked me." Adrian looked at the glowing scars on his palm. "I'm not meant to rule. I'm meant to bridge the gap, complete the connection." He shook his head. "This is insane. I fix broken things for a living, not broken dynasties." "Perhaps," Solara said slowly, "that is exactly what you are meant to fix." Before anyone could respond, alarms began wailing throughout the palace. Kaya pressed a hand to her ear, listening to some communication device, then paled. "Majesty," she said urgently. "Scout ships on the edge of the system. The hegemony has found us." The tension in the room shifted from internal politics to external threat. Adrian recognized the look that passed between the warriors, the expression of people preparing for a fight they might not win. "Who's the hegemony?" he asked, though he suspected he wouldn't like the answer. "The reason the blade was lost," Solara said grimly. "The ones who killed my mother and 1,000 of our warriors. They've been searching for the blade ever since." "Let me guess," Adrian said, looking at the softly glowing sword in his hand. "They can track it somehow." "Once activated," Yes. Kale's expression was calculating. Which means human. That you've just doomed us all. Adrian wanted to argue, but the sword pulsed in his grip, and he knew with sickening certainty that Kale was right. The blade had been dormant for 20 years, hidden and safe. His touch had awakened it, sent out a signal across space like a beacon. The hegemony was coming, and it was his fault. Well, he said, trying for a lightness he didn't feel. Anyone want to tell me how to turn this thing off? The silence that answered him was not encouraging. The war room materialized around them as Solara led the group through corridors that reconfigured themselves with each step. Adrian clutched the sword, its weight seeming to increase with every passing moment. His burned hand throbbed in rhythm with his heartbeat, the strange circuit scars pulsing with their own inner light. "How long do we have?" Solara asked, as they entered a spherical chamber where holographic displays showed the star system in painful detail. 3 days at their current speed, Kaya reported, manipulating the displays with practiced gestures. 5 if they're being cautious about ambushes. They won't be cautious, General Kale said, his voice dripping contempt. Not when they can sense the blade. They'll come in force, knowing we can't run. He shot Adrian a look that could have melted steel. Thanks to our human friend's curiosity. I was trying to help, Adrian protested, but even he heard how weak it sounded. The sword in his hand pulsed, and suddenly he was drowning in memories not his own, a Veilari fleet burning, a queen's last stand, children evacuated in desperate refugee ships as the hegemony's weapons turned a paradise world to glass. He gasped, nearly dropping the blade. What was that? The memories, Solara said softly. Every queen who held the blade left an imprint. Their experiences, their knowledge, their pain, all preserved. She studied him with those unsettling amber eyes. You're experiencing my mother's last hours. I'm sorry, Adrian said, meaning it. I didn't know. Apologies won't stop the hegemony fleet, Kyle interrupted. We need action, Majesty. Give me command of our defenses. I'll make them pay for every meter of space. And lose most of our warriors in the process, Solara countered. We can't match their firepower with conventional tactics. Then, what do you suggest that we put our faith in this alien? Kale gestured dismissively at Adrian. He can barely hold the blade without whimpering. Adrian wanted to argue, but another wave of alien memories crashed over him. This time, it was older, much older. A queen named Thyra standing before a primitive forge, working metal with techniques that shouldn't have been possible, binding stellar energy into solid matter through pure will and ancient science. The blade isn't just a weapon, he said suddenly, the knowledge bubbling up from somewhere deep. It's a key, a tool. It was made to build things, not just destroy them. Everyone turned to stare at him. Even Kale looked taken aback. Explain, Solara commanded. Adrian struggled to put the alien concepts into words. Your ancestors, they weren't conquerors. They were engineers, builders. The blade was created to help them shape reality on a fundamental level. The fighting came later, when they had something worth defending. He looked at the sword in his hand, seeing it properly for the first time. Not a weapon of war, but a tool of creation perverted by necessity. You've been using it wrong for centuries, like using a molecular assembler as a club. Fascinating history lesson, Kyle sneered, recovering his composure. But unless you can turn poetry into plasma cannons, it won't help us. Maybe I can, Adrian said, surprising himself with his certainty. The sword was showing him things, possibilities, potentials, pathways through reality that normal physics said were impossible. I need to see your defenses, all of them. And he hesitated, then forged ahead. I need access to your city's power core. Absolutely not, Kale said immediately. Majesty, this is obviously a trap. He'll sabotage our systems and leave us defenseless for his human masters. My human masters are probably dead, Adrian shot back. Or weren't you listening? My ship was shot down. By your people. I might add. He turned to Solara. Look, I know I'm asking for a lot of trust, but that sword picked me for a reason. Maybe it's because I'm the only one here who looks at problems and thinks, how do I fix this? Instead of, how do I fight this? Solara was quiet for a long moment, studying him. Adrian felt like those amber eyes were peeling back layers of his soul, examining his motivations with surgical precision. Show me your hand, she said finally. Adrian extended his burned palm. The circuit scars had darkened from red to deep amber, almost the same color as Velari eyes. But there was something else the patterns were spreading, slowly but visibly, creating new pathways up his wrist. It's claiming you, Solara observed. The longer you hold it, the deeper the connection grows. Eventually, you won't be entirely human anymore. Great, Adrian muttered. Just what I needed, alien sword cancer. You could put it down, she suggested. The connection is still new. It might release you. Adrian looked at the blade, then at the holographic display showing incoming doom. 3 days, maybe 5, against a force that had been hunting this weapon for 20 years. He tightened his grip. No, I started this mess. I'll help fix it. He met her gaze. But I need access to everything. No restrictions. No guards breathing down my neck. Trust me or don't. But make the choice now. Majesty, Kale began, but Solara raised a hand for silence. Kaya, she said, not looking away from Adrian. Give him full access. Everything he needs. Your Majesty, Kale's composure finally cracked. This is madness. You're entrusting our survival to an alien who's held the blade for less than an hour. Yes, Solara said simply. I am... She turned to face her general, and Adrian saw steel beneath her regal bearing. Because in less than an hour, he's shown more understanding of the blade's true nature than our scholars have in generations. Because the blade chose him, whether we like it or not, and because, General, we are out of conventional options. I will not stand by while... Then don't stand by, Solara interrupted. Prepare our warriors. Set your ambushes. Plan your last stands. But while you're fighting the war, we'll lose. Let him try to prevent it. The tension between them crackled like lightning. Adrian had the distinct feeling he was witnessing an argument that had been building for years, maybe decades. Finally, Kale bowed stiffly. As your Majesty commands. But when this fails, and it will fail, remember that you chose the word of an outsider over your own people. He turned on his heel and strode from the chamber, several warriors following in his wake. He's going to be a problem, Adrian observed. Kyle has been a problem since my mother died, Solara said wearily. He believes strength comes from tradition, from maintaining the old ways without question. My mother's death only reinforced his belief she died because she tried to negotiate with the hegemony instead of fighting. What happened? They promised safe passage for our refugees if she surrendered the blade. She agreed. Solara's expression was distant, lost in memory. They killed her anyway, destroyed the refugee ships, would have glassed our world if we hadn't activated the planetary shields in time. I'm sorry, Adrian said again, understanding now why Kale distrusted outsiders. Don't be sorry. Be brilliant. Solara nodded to Kaya. Show him everything. And engineer. She paused at the door. Try not to blow up my city. The next 20 hours were a blur of alien technology and impossible physics. Adrian's engineering training had prepared him for a lot: how to repair failing life support systems, how to jury-rig communications from spare parts, how to coax one more jump out of damaged FTL drives. It had not prepared him for technology that operated on principles that made quantum mechanics look like a child's building blocks. The Velari power core wasn't a reactor in any sense he understood. It was a contained dimensional fold, a piece of space-time twisted in on itself and forced to bleed energy into their reality. Looking at it gave him a headache. Understanding it, with the sword's memories filling in the gaps, made his nose bleed. "This is insane," he muttered, wiping blood away as he studied the containment systems. "You're literally using a baby black hole as a battery." "Is that bad?" Kaya asked. She'd been assigned as his liaison, following him through the city's technical centers with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "It's not bad. It's brilliant. Insanely dangerous. But brilliant." Adrian traced the power flows with his enhanced perception, seeing patterns that normal human eyes couldn't process. "Your ancestors were either geniuses or completely mad. Both, according to the histories," Kaya said dryly. "Is this helping with our current problem?" "Maybe." Adrian pulled up holographic displays of the city's defensive systems. "Your shields are impressive, but they're designed to repel energy weapons and kinetic strikes. The hegemony uses something different, don't they?" "Void weapons," Kaya confirmed, her expression darkening. "They punch holes through shields, through armor, through reality itself. There's no conventional defense." "Because you're thinking conventionally." Adrian manipulated the displays, rearranging defensive grids, power distributions, shield harmonics. The sword in his hand grew warm, approving. "What if, instead of trying to stop their weapons, we made their weapons irrelevant?" "How?" Adrian grinned, the expression slightly manic after hours without sleep. "By making the city impossible to hit." He threw himself into the work with the focused intensity that had gotten him through engineering school on Mars, despite being the youngest in his class. The sword fed him knowledge, not just technical specifications, but the philosophy behind Velari technology. They didn't just manipulate energy and matter. They convinced reality to be different than it was. The defensive modifications required a complete rebuild of their shield generators. Adrian found himself directing teams of Velari technicians who regarded him with mixtures of awe and skepticism. Some followed his instructions precisely. Others questioned every decision. "You want us to reverse the polarity on a dimensional stabilizer?" one tech asked, her tone suggesting he'd asked her to divide by zero. "Not reverse," Adrian corrected, sketching equations in the air that the sword translated into Velari mathematical notation. "Invert. Create a standing wave that exists in phase space, but not real space." "That's impossible." "So is your power core. But it works." Adrian touched the sword to a console, and suddenly the equations made perfect sense to everyone watching. "Look, I know it's counterintuitive, but the hegemony weapons work by forcing reality to accept an impossible state, a hole where matter should be. We're going to make the entire city an impossible state. You can't punch a hole in something that isn't entirely there." The tech's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "A phase shield, not blocking attacks but existing outside their frame of reference." She immediately began implementing his modifications with renewed enthusiasm. Adrian moved from station to station, the sword's knowledge flowing through him like water. He wasn't just drawing on one queen's expertise, but thousands of years of accumulated understanding. Each problem led to 3 solutions. Each solution revealed 4 new problems. It was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. Sometime during the second day, Solara found him passed out over a control console, the sword still clutched in his hand. She studied the displays around him, noting the radical changes he'd made to their defensive systems. "Will it work?" she asked Kaya. "I don't know," the commander admitted. "Half of what he's done shouldn't be possible. The other half is so far beyond our understanding, it might as well be magic. But..." She gestured to a display showing power readings. "The city's energy signature has changed. We're drawing less power while generating stronger fields." It's elegant in a way that makes me think he might actually know what he's doing. Solara reached out to touch Adrian's shoulder, then stopped as the sword pulsed, warning, "How are the integration symptoms?" "Accelerating." Kaya pulled up medical scans. "The neural pathways in his brain are restructuring. His DNA is stable, but there are markers appearing that we don't recognize. If he keeps holding the sword, he'll become something new." Solara finished. "Neither human nor Velari." She was quiet for a moment. "Wake him. Time grows short." Adrian came awake with a gasp, momentarily lost between human memories and alien knowledge. The sword pulsed in his grip, and he realized he couldn't let go even if he wanted to. The weapon had fused to his palm, skin and metal merging at the quantum level. "How long was I out?" he asked, his voice hoarse. 6 hours, Kaya informed him. "The hegemony fleet has increased speed. They'll be here in 18 hours. The modifications? 70% complete. Your engineering teams have been working without rest." Adrian pushed himself upright, ignoring the protest from his body. He'd been running on stimulants and sword energy for too long, but the work wasn't done. "I need to see the weapon systems," he said. "Defense won't be enough. We need to be able to hit back." "Our weapons can't penetrate their shields," Kaya said. "We've tried for 20 years. "Your weapons can't," Adrian corrected. "But what if we built new ones?" He was already moving, driven by purpose and desperation. The sword showed him possibilities, weapons that existed in 13 dimensions simultaneously. Probability cannons that fired might-have-beens. Entropy reversers that undid damage by convincing the universe it never happened. Most were beyond their ability to build in 18 hours. But some. "Here," he said, pulling up designs that hurt to look at directly. "Cascade resonators. They don't try to penetrate shields, they use the shield's own energy against them. The stronger the defense, the more devastating the feedback." "Theoretical weapons," a weapons tech protested. "The power requirements alone are manageable if we use the sword as a focus." Adrian interrupted. He'd been avoiding that truth. But time was running out. "It was designed to channel stellar energies. We can use it to amplify our weapons." But, Solara prompted. She'd been shadowing him, watching his work with intense focus. "But it'll create a deeper bond. Maybe irreversible." Adrian looked at his hand where the sword had fused to his palm. The circuit scars now reached his elbow, and he could feel them spreading across his chest. "I'm already changing. This would accelerate it." "Then don't," Solara said firmly. "You've done enough. We can face them with conventional weapons." "And lose." Adrian met her eyes, seeing concern there that went beyond mere political calculation. "I know what the hegemony does to worlds that resist. The sword showed me. They don't just conquer, they erase. Culture, history, identity, all gone. They'll turn your people into drones." "Better to die free than live as slaves," Kaya said, echoing what was clearly a Velari proverb. "Better still to live free," Adrian countered. "I didn't come this far to give up now." He turned back to the weapons console. "Besides, I'm an engineer. Solving impossible problems is literally my job description." The next hours blurred together. Adrian worked in a fugue state, the sword's knowledge flowing through him like a river. He designed weapons that shouldn't exist, defenses that operated on principles that made physics cry. Velari technicians scrambled to keep up, building devices from specifications that seemed more like poetry than engineering. General Kale appeared periodically, watching the modifications with undisguised suspicion. "You're changing everything," he accused during one visit, discarding centuries of proven tactical doctrine for untested theories. "Your proven tactics didn't save the Queen," Adrian said without looking up from his work. "Maybe it's time to try something new." Kale's hand went to his weapon, but Solara's presence stopped him. The general stormed out, But Adrian knew the confrontation was only postponed, not avoided. As the hegemony fleet approached a sensor range, Adrian made final adjustments to the city's defenses. The phase shields shimmered into existence, making Theta flicker like a mirage. Cascade resonators powered up with harmonics that made the air itself sing. And at the center of it all, Adrian stood with the Queen's blade, ready to channel energies that no human was meant to touch. "You know," he said to Solara, as they watched the fleet approach on long-range sensors. "When I woke up 3 days ago, my biggest concern was whether the coffee maker in the cargo bay had survived the crash." "And now?" she asked. "Now I'm about to fight an interstellar empire with a magic sword and theoretical weapons that might explode if I sneeze wrong." He managed a tired grin. "Still beats fixing air recyclers." The first hegemony ships dropped out of FTL at the system's edge. They were massive things, all angles and aggression, designed to intimidate as much as destroy. Adrian counted 30 capital ships, each one capable of glassing a continent. "They brought a full battle group," Kaya observed. "They're not taking chances." "Good," Adrian said, feeling the sword's eagerness for battle, or was that his own? It was getting harder to tell where he ended and the weapon began. "Neither are we." The hegemony fleet advanced in perfect formation, void weapons charging with energies that made space itself recoil. In 3 days, Adrian had gone from simple engineer to the architect of an impossible defense. Now came the test. As the first void weapons fired, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The phase shields activated, and Theta vanished. Not destroyed, not hidden, simply elsewhere. The void weapons passed through empty space, their impossible energies finding no target. The hegemony fleet paused, confused by the absence of expected destruction. Then the cascade resonators fired. Adrian channeled power through the sword, his consciousness expanding to encompass the entire defensive grid. He felt each weapon discharge, each shield modulation, each quantum fluctuation. The resonators found the frequencies of the hegemony shields and played them back in perfect destructive harmony. 3 capital ships imploded as their own defenses turned against them. But the hegemony adapted quickly. Their remaining ships spread out, modulating shield frequencies, returning fire with weapons Adrian hadn't expected. Probability bombs that tried to rewrite history, so Theta had never existed. Entropy beams that aged sections of the city 1,000 years in seconds. Adrian countered desperately, using the sword to reinforce reality, to insist that Theta would continue to exist. The strain was enormous. He felt his neurons firing in patterns that human brains weren't designed for. Blood ran from his nose, his ears. The circuit scars spread across his entire body, glowing bright enough to be seen through his clothes. "Adrian," Solara's voice seemed to come from very far away. "You're killing yourself." "Not yet," he gasped, pouring more power through the weapons grid. "Still got work to do." The battle raged in dimensions that normal senses couldn't perceive. Adrian fought with mathematics and willpower, convincing the universe that the hegemony's weapons were merely suggestions rather than facts. The cascade resonators sang their destructive song, and more enemy ships fell. But they kept coming. The hegemony had brought enough firepower to crack a moon, and they were focusing it all on one city. Even with the phase shields, even with impossible weapons. The math was simple. They were outnumbered 30-1. "We need to retreat," Kale's voice crackled over communications. "My warriors are in position to cover an evacuation." "No," Adrian said, an idea forming through the haze of pain and alien knowledge. "We're not running. We're going to win." "How?" Solara demanded. Adrian smiled. The expression, half human determination, half something else entirely. "By giving them exactly what they came for." He raised the sword, and every Velari in the city felt it. The blade's presence expanded, touching each mind, each soul. For a moment, they were all connected, queen and commoner. warrior and technician, native and alien engineer. Trust me, Adrian said through that connection. And whatever happens next, don't stop believing. Then he did something incredibly stupid. He dropped the face shields. Cartheta snapped back into normal space, fully visible and vulnerable. The hegemony fleet, sensing victory, focused all their weapons on the city. Void cannons charged, probability bombs armed, entropy beams aligned. Adrian raised the Queen's blade high and shouted a single word in the ancient Velari tongue. Return. The sword exploded with light. Not the harsh glare of weapons fire, but something older, deeper. The light of creation, of the first stars, of the forge where reality itself was shaped. It expanded outward in a sphere, passing through shields and armor as if they didn't exist. When it touched the hegemony ships, something impossible happened. They remembered. The sword carried the memories of every queen. But more than that, it carried the memory of why it was made. Before the wars, before the conquest, before the fear and hatred. It showed the hegemony what they had been, before they became an empire built on erasure and control. Adrian felt their confusion, their disbelief, their dawning horror at what they had become. Ship captains who had burned worlds suddenly remembered why they had first reached for the stars. Soldiers who had never questioned orders felt the weight of every life they'd taken. But memory alone wouldn't stop them. The hegemony was built on forgetting, on moving forward without looking back. They would shake off this momentary weakness and resume their attack. Unless Adrian gave them a reason not to. I know you can hear me, he broadcast, the sword amplifying his words across every frequency. I know you remember now. The blade you've been hunting it was never meant to be a weapon of conquest. It was meant to build, to create, to connect. He took a shuddering breath, feeling his humanity slipping away with each word. I'm human, an outsider. I have no stake in your ancient wars, but I've seen what you were and what you've become. You have a choice. He felt Solara's hand on his shoulder, her strength flowing into him through their shared connection. The Queen offers amnesty, she said, her voice carrying the same impossible reach. Put aside your weapons. Remember who you were. Help us build instead of destroy. For a long moment, the two fleets hung in space, poised on the edge of annihilation. Then, one by one, the hegemony ships powered down their weapons. Not all of them. 3 dreadnoughts, their captains too far gone in hatred and conditioning, opened fire. But their shots went wide as their sister ships moved to block them. The hegemony fleet turned on itself. Those who remembered protecting Cartheta from those who refused to. Adrian watched through fading vision as civil war erupted among their enemies. The sword had done more than defend the city. It had shattered the hegemony's certainty, their unity of purpose. You did it, Solara whispered. You actually did it. Not done yet, Adrian mumbled, swaying on his feet. The sword was consuming him, rewriting every cell in his body. But there was one more thing to do. The blade. You need to take it. It's bonded to you, she protested. Removing it could kill you. Not removing it definitely will. Adrian met her eyes, seeing his reflection there, no longer entirely human, but not quite Velari either. Something new. Something that shouldn't exist. The sword was always yours. I was just keeping it warm. He pressed the hilt into her hands, and for a moment, they both held it. The connection between them blazed like a star. Queen and engineer, tradition and innovation. What was, and what could be. Then Adrian let go. Pain shot through him as the blade separated from his flesh. He collapsed, his body going into shock as it tried to figure out what he was without the sword's support. Solara caught him, the blade singing in her grip as it recognized its true bearer. Stay with me, she commanded. That's a royal decree. Adrian managed a weak laugh. Sorry, Your Majesty. Even magic swords can't fix everything. Around them, the battle was ending. The loyal hegemony ships had disabled the rebels and were broadcasting requests for dialogue. Kale's warriors stood down, uncertain but hopeful. The city's impossible weapons powered down. Their purpose served. "You saved us," Solara said. "You saved everyone." "Team effort," Adrian corrected. "I just did what engineers do. Found a broken system and figured out how to fix it." He closed his eyes, feeling strangely peaceful. The circuit scars on his body were fading, but something remained. He was changed, fundamentally and irrevocably. Not quite human anymore, but not Velari either. Something new. As unconsciousness took him, Adrian heard the sword singing in Solara's hands. It sounded like hope. Adrian woke to the sound of argument. His body felt strange, too. Light in some places, too heavy in others. The medical bay's ceiling curved above him in organic spirals that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. Velari architecture, he remembered, still alien, despite everything he'd shared with them through the sword. "He cannot remain here." Kale's voice cut through the fog of medication. "The human served his purpose, but now he's a liability. Look at him, neither one thing nor another. An abomination." "He saved your life." Solara's response was sharp as winter wind. "He saved all our lives, and in doing so, created a precedent that will haunt us for generations. What happens when word spreads? When other outsiders come claiming the blade chose them? Will you welcome them all with open arms?" Adrian tried to sit up, immediately regretting it as the room spun. His hands, both hands now, bore the fading traces of circuit scars. They no longer glowed, but they hadn't disappeared entirely. The patterns seemed to shift beneath his skin like living tattoos, responding to his heartbeat. "You're awake." A young Velari woman appeared at his bedside, her medical scanner humming softly. She had the copper skin of her people, but her eyes were green instead of amber unusual. Adrian's enhanced knowledge supplied, "Please don't move. Your cellular structure is still stabilizing." "How long?" Adrian asked, his voice rough. 6 days, the medic replied. "You've been in and out. Your body couldn't decide what it wanted to be. So we've been helping it remember how to be human." She paused, studying her readings. Mostly human, anyway. The argument outside continued, growing heated. Adrian caught fragments: constitutional crisis, sacred traditions, dangerous precedent. He didn't need to guess what they were discussing. "They're talking about me," he said. It wasn't a question. The medic nodded uncomfortably. "The general has called for a council gathering. He claims your actions, while heroic, have created a theological problem. No off-worlder has ever wielded the Queen's blade and lived. The fact that you survived and returned it," she trailed off, "makes me inconvenient," Adrian finished. He understood politics, even alien ones. Heroes were useful during crisis, embarrassing after. What does the Queen say? She argues for integration, says you've earned a place here through service and sacrifice. The medic adjusted something on his IV line. But the council is divided. Some see you as blessed, others as cursed. A few think you're the herald of a new age. "And what do you think?" She looked at him directly for the first time. Those green eyes, thoughtful. "I think you're a man who touched something beyond understanding and came back changed. Whether that's blessing or curse depends on what you do next." Before Adrian could respond, the door opened. Solara entered, still carrying the Queen's blade. She'd integrated it into her royal regalia. The weapon hung at her side, like it had always belonged there. The sight of it made Adrian's hand ache with phantom pain. "Leave us," she commanded the medic, who bowed and withdrew. Solara studied Adrian with an intensity that made him want to check if his hospital gown was properly fastened. She looked tired, he realized, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from fighting battles with words instead of weapons. "How do you feel?" she asked finally. "Like I've been taken apart and reassembled by someone reading the instructions in a language they don't speak," Adrian said honestly. "But alive. That's more than I expected." "The blade changed you," she said. "More than just physically. Our healers say your neural pathways have been restructured. You think faster now. Process information in ways human brains shouldn't be capable of. And then there's this." She gestured, and his hand moved involuntarily, the circuit scars flaring briefly with amber light. "I can still feel it," Adrian admitted. "The sword. Even though you're holding it, there's still a connection, like an echo." "That echo is what's keeping you alive," Solara said bluntly. "Your human physiology couldn't handle the changes alone. The residual connection to the blade is acting as a bridge, helping your body adapt." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "It also means you can never fully leave. The blade will always call to you, and you to it." "Kale must love that," Adrian said dryly. A bitter smile crossed Solara's face. "Kyle has made his position clear. He's called for your exile at best, execution at worst. He claims you're a corruption of our most sacred traditions." "He's not entirely wrong," Adrian said. "I did corrupt things. Your whole defense network runs on principles that spit in the face of traditional Velari warfare doctrine. And saved us because of it." Solara moved to the window, looking out at her city. "The hegemony ships are still here. You know, in orbit, negotiating. 3 of their captains have requested asylum. They say the memories you showed them won't let them go back to what they were." "I didn't mean for that to happen," Adrian said. "I just wanted to stop them from killing everyone." "Intent and result rarely align perfectly." She turned back to him. "Which brings us to the current problem. You're not human anymore, not fully. But you're not Velari either. You exist between worlds, touched by power that should have killed you. The question is, what do we do with you?" Adrian felt a flutter of fear in his chest. He'd been so focused on survival, on solving the immediate crisis, that he hadn't thought about after. "I suppose asking for a ride home is out of the question." "Your DNA has been altered at a fundamental level," Solara said gently. "Earth's biosphere would reject you like a virus. You'd be dead within days, possibly hours." The fear crystallized into something colder. He was trapped, changed, neither fish nor fowl, as his grandmother used to say. "So what are my options?" he asked, proud that his voice stayed steady. "Fight," Solara said simply. "The council meets tomorrow to decide your fate. Some will speak against you, Kale, foremost among them, but others remember what you did. How you thought not like a conqueror, but like a builder. How you turned certain defeat into impossible victory." She moved closer, and Adrian caught a scent like ozone and desert flowers. "I will speak for you, but you must speak for yourself as well. Tell them who you are, what you believe, why you deserve a place among us. And if they say no, then I'll honor their decision," she said, though something in her expression suggested it would pain her. "I am queen, but I rule by consent of the council. To do otherwise would make me a tyrant." Adrian nodded slowly. He understood. She'd already risked much by trusting him. To push further would fracture her government, maybe start a civil war. He wouldn't ask that of her. "I'll need clothes," he said. "Somehow, I don't think appearing before your council in a medical gown will make the right impression." "Already arranged. Kaya will bring them." Solara hesitated at the door. "Adrian, whatever happens tomorrow, know that I'm grateful. You gave us hope when we had none. You showed us new possibilities. That matters, regardless of the council's decision." She left before he could respond, taking with her the faint hum of the blade's presence. Adrian lay back, staring at the shifting ceiling, and tried not to think about execution methods. Kaya arrived an hour later with clothing that was neither human nor traditional Velari. The outfit was practical pants and tunic in a material that adjusted to temperature, boots that somehow knew exactly how to support his altered feet. But there were touches of ceremony too, the circuit scar patterns embroidered in silver thread, a half cape that suggested authority without claiming it. "The queen designed it herself," Kaya said, helping him stand. His legs shook but held. "She said you needed something that showed who you are now, not who you were or who you might become." "And who am I now?" Adrian asked, catching his reflection in a polished surface. He looked older, though only days had passed. His hair had threads of silver that matched the scars on his hands. His eyes were still brown, but flecked with amber that caught the light. "That's what tomorrow will decide," Kaya said pragmatically. "Can you walk? The council won't respect weakness." Adrian took a tentative step, then another. His body responded differently than before, more fluid, more aware. He could feel air currents, electromagnetic fields, the subtle vibrations of the city's power core far below. It was overwhelming and exhilarating at once. "I can walk," he said. "Good, because you'll need to do more than that." Kaya's expression was serious. "Kyle has been gathering support. He's painting you as the first wave of a human invasion today. One engineer. Tomorrow an army. He's playing on old fears, old hatreds." "I'm one man," Adrian protested. "I couldn't invade a convenience store, let alone a planet." "Logic has little place in fear," Kaya replied. "But you have supporters too. The younger generation sees you as proof that cooperation is possible. The engineers whose lives you saved speak of your ingenuity. And the Queen." She paused. "The Queen has made her position clear." Adrian heard what she wasn't saying. Solara had spent political capital defending him. If he failed tomorrow, it would weaken her position, maybe fatally. "Tell me about the council," he said. "Who are the key players? What are their interests if I'm going to fight a political battle? I need to know the terrain." Kaya smiled approvingly. "You're thinking like a Velari. Good. Come, we have much to discuss." They spent the night in preparation. Kaya briefed him on council dynamics, ancient laws, cultural touchstones he could reference. Adrian's enhanced mind absorbed it all, filing away details and connections. He began to see the shape of possible arguments, the rhetorical weapons he could wield. But as dawn approached, he realized the most important thing wasn't what he'd say, but who he'd be when he said it. The council chamber was a sphere within a sphere. Gravity twisted, so that each counselor sat at what appeared to be the bottom of their own personal bowl. The effect was disorienting. Adrian had to focus on his own footing to avoid vertigo. 43 counselors were present, representing different castes, regions, and philosophies of Velari society. Solara sat not on a throne, but in a chair only slightly more ornate than the others. The blade rested across her lap, quiescent but watchful. General Kale stood in the center, or what passed for center, in a room where every direction was down. He'd chosen his position carefully. Adrian realized, equidistant from all counselors, claiming no favoritism, but also showing no deference. "We are gathered," Solara began formally, "to determine the status and fate of Adrian Cole, human engineer, wielder of the Queen's blade, defender of Cartheta." "Pretender," Kyle corrected immediately. "Usurper, contaminator of sacred traditions." "I object to the general's characterization," a younger counselor said. Adrian recognized her Thera, one of the engineers he'd worked with. "The human took up the blade to save us, not to claim power." "Intent is irrelevant," Kale shot back. "The fact remains that an outsider touched what should never be touched by alien hands. That the blade didn't kill him immediately only proves how deeply he has corrupted our most sacred artifact. Or proves the blade's wisdom exceeds our own," another counselor suggested. The debate erupted in multiple directions, voices overlapping in a cacophony of argument. Adrian stood silent in his designated spot, waiting. Kaya had coached him. Let them exhaust their initial positions before speaking. Enter the conversation at the moment of maximum impact. That moment came when Kale made his formal accusation. "I call for the execution of the human Adrian Cole," the general declared, his voice cutting through the din. "He is an abomination, neither of our people nor of his own. His continued existence threatens the purity of our bloodlines and the sanctity of our traditions. Every moment he lives is an insult to our ancestors." The chamber fell silent. This was the moment, the formal call for death that required formal response. Adrian stepped forward. "I request the right of defense." "You have no rights here, alien," Kale snarled. "He has the right," Solara said quietly. "As one who has shed blood in defense of Cartheta. Or do you dispute that he bled for us?" "General." Kale's jaw tightened, but he stepped back. Ancient law was ancient law. Adrian moved to the chamber's center, feeling the weight of 43 gazes. He'd prepared speeches, arguments, rhetorical flourishes. But standing there, in that impossible room with his life in the balance, he threw them all away. "You're right," he began, addressing Kale directly. "I am an abomination." Surprised murmurs rippled through the council. Even Kale looked taken aback. "I'm something that shouldn't exist," Adrian continued. "Not human, not Velari, but something in between. The blade changed me in ways that terrify me. I can feel your power core's heartbeat. I can see magnetic fields. Sometimes I think in languages I've never learned." He held up his scarred hands. "I am living proof that the universe is stranger and more flexible than any of us imagined." He turned slowly, making eye contact with each counselor. "But I'm also proof that change doesn't mean destruction, that tradition can evolve without dying, that sometimes an outsider's perspective is exactly what's needed to solve problems that seem impossible from within." "Pretty words," Kyle interrupted. "But words won't change what you are, a threat to everything we hold sacred." "You're right again," Adrian agreed, earning more surprised looks. "I am a threat, but not to your traditions, to your stagnation. For 20 years, you've been locked in a stalemate with the hegemony, fighting the same battles, using the same tactics, dying the same deaths. How was that honoring your ancestors?" He gestured to the city beyond the chamber walls. "Your ancestors built impossible things. They folded space, captured stars, created beauty that endures millennia. They were innovators, explorers, dreamers. When did you stop trying to surpass them and start just trying to preserve them?" "How dare you?" Kale began. "I dare because I've touched the blade." Adrian cut him off. "I've felt the memories of queens who conquered not just worlds, but ideas. Who built not just cities, but futures. They didn't fear change, they embodied it." He looked directly at Solara. "Your mother died trying to negotiate peace. That wasn't weakness. As some claim, that was evolution, the attempt to become more than conquerors. The blade remembers her vision, even if that vision died with her." "Until you corrupted it with your alien thoughts," Kale accused. "No," Adrian said firmly. "I completed it. The blade chose me not to rule, but to demonstrate, to show that the future doesn't have to look like the past, that human and Velari can work together, that we can build something neither could achieve alone." He spread his arms, indicating himself. "Look at me. Really look. I'm not human anymore. Earth would reject me, but I'm not Velari either. I'll never have your height, your grace, your natural connection to this world. I'm something new, something that exists only because your queen had the wisdom to trust a scared engineer who just wanted to go home. And now that engineer can never go home," Thara observed quietly. "What do you want, Adrian Cole? If not Earth, if not death, then what?" It was the question he'd been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. Adrian took a breath, feeling the circuit scars pulse with his heartbeat. I want to build, he said simply. I want to take what I've learned, what I've become, and use it. Your defensive systems are just the beginning. Imagine shields that don't just protect, but heal. Weapons that disable rather than destroy. Ships that fold space without breaking it. His voice gained passion. The merger of human innovation and Veilari wisdom could usher in a golden age for both our peoples. Or destruction for both, Kale countered. You speak of merger, but I see only contamination. How long before more humans come, claiming special status because one of their kind touched the blade? How long before we're outnumbered in our own cities? Adrian felt anger spike through him, not his own anger, but an echo of the blade's memories. Queens who had faced similar fears, similar resistance to necessary change. You're so afraid of losing what you have that you've already lost it, he said, his voice carrying an edge of command that surprised everyone, including himself. You cling to the past while the future slips away. The hegemony found you because you were predictable. They nearly destroyed you because you were inflexible. I saved you by being neither. You saved us by luck, Kyle sneered. No, Adrian said firmly. By engineering. By looking at problems from angles you couldn't see. That's what humans bring, not contamination, but perspective. We see solutions where you see only tradition. He paused, gathering his thoughts for the final push. But I'm not asking for open borders or mass integration. I'm asking for the right to exist, to use what I've become in service to the people who, willingly or not, gave me a second life. Let me be your bridge, not fully of either world, but capable of understanding both. And if we refuse, a counselor asked. Adrian met the questioner's gaze steadily. Then you'll kill me, and I'll die knowing I tried. But you'll also kill the future that could have been, the alliance that might have saved both our peoples, the innovations that could have taken us to the stars. He smiled sadly. And the blade will remember. It will remember that when offered a hand in partnership, the Veilari chose the sword instead. Silence descended on the chamber. Adrian had said his piece. Now came judgment. We will vote, Solara announced. All in favor of execution. 12 lights flared red. Adrian counted them, memorizing faces, fewer than he'd feared, more than he'd hoped. All in favor of exile. 8 lights flared yellow. The moderates, unwilling to kill but unable to accept. All in favor of integration. 22 lights flared green. Not an overwhelming majority, but clear enough. Abstaining. Kale's light flared white, surprising everyone. The general's face was stone. The council has spoken, Solara said formally. Adrian Cole is granted resident status in Cartheta, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. He will serve as Special Advisor on Human Veilari Relations and Chief Innovation Engineer. She paused. General Kale, you abstained. Do you accept the Council's decision? Kale stood rigid for a long moment. Then, with visible effort, he bowed. I accept the Council's wisdom, though I maintain my reservations. The human, he stopped, corrected himself. Adrian Cole has earned the right to prove himself. I pray the Council has not made an error we will all regret. Time will tell, Solara said diplomatically. Adrian, do you accept the position and responsibilities offered? Adrian felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't the life he'd planned. He was an engineer who'd wanted nothing more than steady work and a quiet existence. Now, he was something unprecedented, a living bridge between species, a symbol of change whether he wanted to be or not. I accept, he said, though I have one condition. Tension rippled through the chamber. Even Solara looked wary. I want to establish a training program, Adrian said, for young engineers of both species. Human creativity paired with Veilari knowledge, not to replace your traditions, but to enhance them, to build the future we'll share. Ambitious, Thara murmured appreciatively. Dangerous, Kale countered, but without his earlier venom. Necessary, Solara decided. The council will consider your proposal at the next gathering. For now, welcome to Cartheta. Adrian Cole, may you build wisely." The formal session ended, but Adrian found himself surrounded by counselors, wanting to discuss his ideas. Some were skeptical, others eager, but all were engaged. He fielded questions about defensive improvements, theoretical weapons, peaceful applications of military technology. Through it all, he felt the blade's presence distant now, but never gone. It pulsed with something like satisfaction. The sword had chosen him not to rule, but to catalyze, to be the random element that transformed stable systems into something new. Later, as the crowd finally dispersed, Kyle approached. The general studied him with eyes like flint. "You speak well," Kale said grudgingly. "But words are wind. You'll be watched. Adrian Cole. Every mistake catalogued, every failure remembered. And when you inevitably prove that humans and Velari cannot truly merge, I'll be there." "I wouldn't expect anything less," Adrian replied. "Opposition keeps innovation honest. Challenge prevents complacency. In a way, General, I need you as much as you need me." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "You're the weight against which I push," Adrian said. "The tradition I must respect while still moving forward. Without you, I might change things too quickly, break things that should be preserved. You're my balance, General. My reminder that not all change is good." For the first time since they'd met, Kale looked genuinely surprised. "You're either very wise or very clever." "I'm an engineer," Adrian said with a slight smile. "We're trained to see systems, not just components. You and I, Solara and the Council, tradition and innovation, we're all parts of a greater whole. The trick is making sure all the parts work together." Kale considered this for a long moment. Then, without another word, he turned and left. "That went better than expected," Kaya said, appearing at Adrian's elbow. "He didn't try to kill you even once." "Give it time," Adrian said dryly. "I'm sure I'll give him plenty of opportunities." He looked around the empty chamber, then at his scarred hands. The circuit patterns had stabilized, no longer painful, but always present. A permanent reminder of the day he'd touched something beyond understanding and lived to tell about it. "What now?" he asked. "Now you work," Kaya said simply. "You made grand promises. Time to deliver on them." Adrian nodded. He'd asked for this, fought for it. Really. The right to exist in a world not his own, to build bridges both literal and metaphorical. It wouldn't be easy. Kale's opposition would be constant, and not everyone who'd voted for integration truly believed in it. He'd have to prove himself every day, with every project, every innovation. But as he left the council chamber, Adrian felt something he hadn't experienced since the crash hope. He was changed. Yes. Transformed into something that shouldn't exist. But maybe that was exactly what both species needed. Someone who belonged fully to neither world, but could see the potential in both. The Queen's Blade had chosen him not to rule, but to build. And Adrian Cole, engineer and bridge between worlds, intended to build something magnificent. The workshop Solara assigned to Adrian sprawled across 3 levels of the palace's east wing, a space that hadn't been used since the last royal engineer died 40 years ago. Adrian stood in the doorway, taking in the accumulated dust and obsolete equipment, and felt a familiar itch in his fingers. Nothing called to an engineer quite like broken things waiting to be fixed. "It needs work," Kaya said from behind him, her tone apologetic. "We can assign cleaning crews." "No," Adrian interrupted, already moving into the space. "I'll do it myself. Need to understand what's here, what works, what doesn't." He ran a hand along a fabrication unit that might have been state-of-the-art when his grandmother was young. "Besides, cleaning helps me think." Kaya watched him examine the equipment with obvious curiosity. "You're not what I expected from a human engineer," What did you expect? Arrogance, demands for the latest technology, complaints about working conditions. She gestured at the dusty space. Not someone who sees potential in ruins. Adrian smiled, remembering his first engineering job in the Mars colonies. Every engineer starts in someone else's leftovers. You learn to see what could be, not what is. He paused, circuit scars tingling as they brushed against an old power coupling. Though having alien tech sense helps. The cleanup took 3 days. Adrian worked alone, partly by choice, partly because most Velari still gave him a wide berth. He didn't mind the solitude. It gave him time to process everything that had happened, to examine the strange hybrid he'd become. His body had stabilized into something functional, if not entirely comfortable. He was stronger than before. His human muscles somehow denser, more efficient. His senses were sharper too. He could hear conversations 3 rooms away, see heat patterns in the walls, feel the electromagnetic pulse of every device around him. But it was the mental changes that unsettled him most. Sometimes he'd start thinking in Velari without realizing it. Other times, he'd know things, technical specifications, historical details, cultural nuances that he'd never learned. The blade had left echoes in his mind, fragments of every queen who'd wielded it. It was like having a library in his head where all the books were written in different languages, some of which he could suddenly read. On the 3rd night, as he was calibrating a molecular printer that might actually work with some coaxing, Solara appeared in his doorway. She'd traded her formal robes for practical clothes, fitted pants and a tunic that reminded him she was a warrior as much as a queen. "May I enter?" she asked, observing the formal courtesy due to another's workspace. "It's your palace," Adrian pointed out, but gestured welcome anyway. She moved through the cluttered space with careful grace, examining his progress. "You've been busy." "Busy keeps the existential dread at bay," Adrian said, only half joking. "Plus, I've got promises to keep. Can't revolutionize 2 civilizations with broken equipment." "Is that what you're planning, revolution?" Adrian set down his tools. "Considering. Evolution, maybe. Revolution implies tearing down what came before. I'd rather build on it." He gestured to the molecular printer. "Like this. Your ancestors built it to last centuries. The core technology is still sound. It just needs updating, integration with newer systems, not replacement enhancement." Solara studied him with those impossible amber eyes. "Kale thinks you're playing a long game, earning trust before revealing your true intentions." "And what do you think?" "I think you're exactly what you appear to be, an engineer who can't help but fix broken things." She paused. "I also think you're lonely." The observation hit harder than Adrian expected. He turned back to the printer, using adjustment as an excuse to avoid her gaze. "I've been alone before. Part of the job when you're the only human tech on alien ships. But you've never been this kind of alone." Solara pressed gently. "Cut off from your species, changed into something neither side fully accepts. Even I don't know exactly what you are now." "That makes 2 of us," Adrian admitted. "Sometimes I feel like myself. Other times—" He flexed his scarred hand, watching the patterns shift. "Other times I feel like a translation error, like someone tried to convert human into Velari, but got stuck halfway." "The blade doesn't make errors," Solara said with certainty. "It chose you for a reason. To save your city. Yes, job done. But this—" he gestured at himself. "This feels less like purpose and more like side effect." Solara was quiet for a moment, then moved to an old workbench, running her fingers along its scarred surface. "When I first took the throne, I spent months feeling like an imposter. My mother had been queen for 2 centuries. She knew every law, every tradition, every ceremonial gesture. I was barely 40, a child by our standards." "You seem to have figured it out," Adrian observed. By realizing I couldn't be her. Solara's smile was rueful. I had to be my own kind of queen, one who made mistakes, who asked questions instead of pretending to know answers, who trusted engineers with sacred blades. She looked at him directly. Perhaps you need to stop trying to be human or Velari and start being Adrian. Profound advice from someone who's never had her species changed at the molecular level, Adrian said, but without heat. No, but I've had my role changed, my purpose, my understanding of what's possible. She moved closer, and Adrian caught that scent again, ozone and flowers. But underneath something else. The blade's resonance, maybe, recognizing its former bearer. We're more alike than you might think. Before Adrian could respond, alarms began wailing through the palace. Not the sharp shriek of attack warnings, but the lower tone that meant urgent news. Solara's expression shifted instantly from philosophical to professional. Come, she said. If they're using general alarms, it affects us both. They found the council chamber in chaos. Advisors clustered around holographic displays showing ship movements, stellar positions, communication intercepts. Kale stood at the center, his expression grim, but satisfied in a way that made Adrian nervous. What's happened? Solara demanded. The Terran Colonial Authority, Kale announced, his eyes finding Adrian. They've sent a diplomatic vessel. They want to discuss the return of their citizen. Adrian felt his stomach drop. He'd known this would come eventually, but he'd hoped for more time. Time to establish himself, to prove his worth, to become irreplaceable. When Solara asked, 3 days out at standard approach speeds, Kale reported. The ship identifies as TCS Prometheus, Ambassador class. They're following all protocols, requesting formal audience. Since when does Earth care about one lost engineer? Adrian asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Kale's smile was sharp. Since that engineer redesigned an alien city's defenses and survived contact with technology that should have killed him. Your transformation has not gone unnoticed. Adrian Cole. How could they know? Kaya demanded. We've had no contact. The hegemony, Adrian realized. The ships that surrendered. They'd have sent reports before defecting. Earth monitors all hegemony communications. He laughed bitterly. I've become interesting. Valuable, Solara corrected. A human who understands Velari technology at a fundamental level, who can bridge our sciences. Every power in the galaxy would want to claim you. I'm not a prize to be claimed, Adrian said sharply, then caught himself. The possessiveness in his tone surprised him. When had he started thinking of Cartheta as something to defend rather than escape? No, Solara agreed. You're not, which is why we need to handle this carefully. She turned to her advisors. Full diplomatic protocols. Prepare the formal reception halls, and send word that I will meet with the Earth representatives personally. Majesty, Kale interjected. Perhaps it would be wiser to let the Council handle this, to maintain distance. From the man who saved our city, who even now works to improve our defenses. Solara's tone could have frozen stars. No, General. Adrian Cole is under my protection. Earth will understand that clearly. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Adrian found himself fitted for formal robes, drilled on diplomatic protocols, coached on what to say and what to avoid. Through it all, he felt the weight of approaching choice. Earth wanted him back, his own people, his own world. A chance to be human again, even if changed. They'd have medical facilities, specialists who might be able to stabilize or even reverse his transformation. He could go home. Except Earth wasn't home anymore. The realization hit him as he stood in his workshop, surrounded by half-completed projects. Home was where you built things, where your work mattered, where people trusted you with their most sacred artifacts and impossible problems. You're thinking too loud, Rin said from the doorway. The young warrior had become a regular visitor, fascinated by Adrian's work. The whole palace can feel your brooding. I don't brood, Adrian protested. I analyze. Completely different thing. You analyze broodingly, Rin corrected, entering uninvited and perching on a cleared workbench. Everyone's taking bets on what you'll choose. What are the odds? 3-1 you stay, 5-1 you go, 10-1 you try to steal a ship and run for uncharted space. Adrian snorted. Who's giving those odds? Me, Rin grinned. I figure anyone crazy enough to grab a cursed sword barehanded might do anything. It's not cursed, Adrian said automatically. Just selective about who it works with. Like you're selective about where you belong. Adrian looked at the young warrior. Really looked. Rin had supported him from the beginning, one of the few who saw opportunity rather than threat in his presence. What do you think I should do? I think you should stop pretending there's a choice, Rin said simply. You can't go back. Not really. Even if Earth could fix your body, could they fix your mind? Take away the memories, the knowledge, the connections you've made. She leaned forward. Could they make you forget how it felt to save a world? Adrian didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because she was right, and he hated that she was right. The Terran delegation arrived with all the pomp Earth could muster. The Prometheus was sleek and aggressive, its lines speaking of human engineering philosophy, efficiency over elegance, function over form. Adrian watched its approach from the palace's observation deck, circuit scars tingling with each scan that swept over the city. Nervous, Solara asked, joining him at the window. Terrified, Adrian admitted. It's easier to face enemy fleets than your own people's expectations. They're still your people. Adrian considered. They're my species, but people. He thought of Rin's easy acceptance, Kaya's professional respect, even Kale's honest opposition. I'm not sure anymore. The formal reception took place in the hall of first meetings, a sphere of crystal that refracted light into rainbows. The Terran delegation looked small and drab against the soaring architecture, 5 humans in formal uniforms, trying to project authority in a space that dwarfed them. Ambassador Sarah Chen led them, her black hair severely pulled back, her expression professionally neutral. Adrian recognized the type career diplomat, trained to see angles and advantages in everything. Her eyes found him immediately, widening slightly at his appearance. Adrian Cole, she said, after the formal greetings were complete. You look, well, Ambassador, Adrian replied, noting how she avoided commenting on his obvious changes. I'm surprised Earth sent someone so quickly. You're a Terran citizen in distress, Chen said smoothly. Of course we came. Her eyes flicked to the circuit scars, visible on his hands. Though I see reports of your distress may have been exaggerated. Or understated, depending on perspective, Adrian said. The negotiations that followed were a dance of words and implications. Chen presented Earth's position with practiced skill. Adrian was a citizen in need of medical attention, a valuable human resource being kept from his people, a potential bridge between civilizations who belonged with those who could best utilize his unique position. Solara countered with equal skill. Adrian was a free individual who'd chosen service, a hero of Cartheta who'd earned his place, an integrated member of their society who couldn't be simply reclaimed like lost property. Adrian watched it all with growing unease. They were discussing him like he wasn't there, like he was a resource to be allocated rather than a person with his own will. The Blade's memories stirred, showing him queens who'd faced similar situations, who'd been traded and bargained over like prizes. Enough, he said finally. Standing, both delegations turned to him in surprise. I appreciate everyone's concern for my well-being, but perhaps someone should ask what I want. Of course, Chen said smoothly. That's why we're here, to ensure you have choices. Choices. Adrian tasted the word. Like the choice to remain human. That ship has sailed, Ambassador. Literally sailed through my DNA and kept going. Our medical facilities can't undo what the Queen's blade did. Adrian interrupted. I know. I've run the calculations. The changes go deeper than genetics. I'm quantumly entangled with Velari technology now. Trying to extract that would be like trying to unbake a cake. Chen's expression didn't change. But Adrian caught the slight tightening around her eyes. She'd known, or at least suspected. This wasn't a rescue mission, it was a recruitment. Even so, she pressed. Earth is your home. Your people need you. The knowledge you've gained, the connections you've made, think what they could mean for human advancement. And think what his loss would mean for ours, Kyle interjected. Adrian was surprised to hear the general defend him, until he realized it wasn't defense. It was possession of a different kind. I'm not a database to be downloaded, Adrian said. Not a resource to be maximized. I'm a person who touched something impossible and survived. That survival came with obligations. To whom? Chen asked. To everyone, Adrian replied. To the Velari who trusted me with their greatest treasure. To the humans who might benefit from what I've learned. To the future we're all stumbling toward. He moved to the center of the hall, addressing both delegations equally. You want to know what I choose? I choose both. I choose neither. I choose to be what I've become, a bridge. Meaning, Chen's diplomatic mask was slipping. I'll establish an exchange program, Adrian announced, the idea crystallizing as he spoke. Human and Velari engineers, working together, learning from each other, building things neither could imagine alone. The council hasn't approved, Kale began. The council will approve, Solara said quietly. Because it's the logical next step. We've hidden in our corner of space too long. Adrian has shown us what cooperation can achieve. And Earth, Chen pressed. What do we gain? Access, Adrian said simply. Limited, controlled, but real. The chance to learn, to grow, to be part of something larger than colonial expansion and resource exploitation. Chen was silent for a long moment, calculating. You're proposing to stay here, to remain with the Velari. I'm proposing to be what the blade made me, a connection between worlds. Adrian held up his scarred hands. These marks aren't just decoration. They're a commitment, a promise that I'll use what I've become to build bridges, not walls. Pretty words, Chen said, echoing Kale's earlier criticism. But Earth doesn't deal in poetry. No, but you deal in pragmatism, Adrian countered. And pragmatically, what serves you better? Trying to reclaim a damaged citizen who can never fully reintegrate. Or having an advocate here, someone who understands both societies and can facilitate real cooperation. He saw the moment Chen's perspective shifted. The ambassador was many things, but not stupid. She recognized opportunity when it presented itself. You'd need oversight, she said carefully. Regular communication with Earth authorities. Accountability measures. Within reason, Solara interjected. Adrian Cole is a resident of Cartheta. He answers to our laws first. Dual citizenship, then, Chen proposed. Dual obligations, dual opportunities. Adrian felt something ease in his chest. They were negotiating now, not fighting, building frameworks instead of walls. The discussions continued for hours, hammering out details. Adrian would remain on Cartheta as chief innovation engineer and liaison. Earth would send a small technical team to work with him, volunteers only, those willing to take the same risks he had. The Velari would share selected technologies, carefully chosen to benefit without destabilizing. Both sides would move slowly, cautiously, but they would move together. You realize this makes you even more of a target, Chen warned, as the formal agreements were drafted. Every faction that opposes human Velari cooperation will want you silenced. Then I'll have to be too useful to silence, Adrian replied. Later, After the delegations had retired and the halls were quiet, Adrian found himself back in his workshop. The molecular printer was finally working, humming contentedly as it fabricated components for his next project. He'd done it, found a way to stay that served everyone's interests. So why did he feel so unsettled? Because you've just committed to changing 2 civilizations, Solara said from behind him. He wasn't surprised she was there. He'd felt her approach through the blade's lingering connection. That would unsettle anyone with sense. Having second thoughts about your support, Adrian asked. No, I meant what I said. We've hidden too long, fought the same battles too many times. You've shown us another way. She moved to stand beside him, watching the printer work. But I worry about the cost to you. Cost? You'll never fully belong to either world now. Always standing between, translating, mediating. It's a lonely position. Adrian thought about that, then smiled. Maybe, but it's a useful position, and I'd rather be useful than comfortable. Spoken like a true engineer. Solara's return smile was warm. Build your bridges, Adrian Cole. Both our peoples need them. As she left, Adrian turned back to his work. The printer finished its current project, a component that merged human and Veilari design principles. Something new that honored both traditions while being limited by neither. It was a small thing, barely worth noting, but it was a beginning, and beginnings, Adrian had learned, could change worlds if given the chance. He had work to do. The first human volunteers arrived 2 months later, their shuttle landing with all the grace of a brick thrown at water. Adrian watched from the landing platform, noting how the Veilari guards tensed at the inelegant approach. He'd have to address that different species, different aesthetics of motion. They fly like their ships are fighting the air, Kaya observed, standing beside him. Because they are, Adrian replied. Human engineering assumes the universe is hostile until proven otherwise. We build things to survive first, thrive second. And Veilari engineering assumes the universe can be convinced to cooperate if you ask nicely enough. He smiled at her expression. Both approaches have merit. That's why this program might actually work. The shuttle doors opened with a hydraulic hiss that made several Veilari wince. 5 humans emerged, blinking in the binary sunlight, trying not to stare too obviously at their surroundings. Adrian recognized the look, overwhelmed, but trying to hide it behind professional composure. Dr. Maria Santos led them. Her graying hair pulled back in a practical bun that had probably been neat when she left Earth. She was small, barely 5 feet, but she moved with the confidence of someone used to commanding respect despite her stature. Her eyes found Adrian immediately, widening slightly at his altered appearance. Adrian Cole, she asked, though it wasn't really a question. Who else could he be? Dr. Santos. Welcome to Cartheta. Adrian stepped forward, noting how the other humans unconsciously shifted to keep distance between themselves and the Veilari. I hope your journey wasn't too difficult. Long, Santos admitted, and humbling. Your host's FTL technology makes our best drives look like stone wheels. Different approaches, Adrian said diplomatically. Theirs is more elegant, but ours is more robust. Veilari drives sing through space. Human drives punch it in the face until it lets us through. One of the other humans, a young man with the pale complexion of a born spacer, actually laughed. That's the best description of jump drives I've ever heard. Thomas Park, the man introduced himself. Quantum engineer. I volunteered because, well, when else am I going to get to study alien technology? Adrian felt some of his tension ease. At least one of them was here for the right reasons, curiosity, rather than career advancement or national interest. The others introduced themselves: Dr. Ruth Hawkins, xenobiologist, James Morrison, material scientist, and surprisingly, Captain Lisa Stone, military liaison. Military, Adrian asked, not bothering to hide his concern. Stone met his gaze steadily. Observer only. Earth wants to understand the security implications of technological exchange. I'm here to assess and report, not interfere. And if your assessment is negative, then I report that honestly. She paused. I volunteered for this. Mr. Cole. That should tell you something about my expectations. Adrian studied her for a moment, then nodded. At least she was direct. He could work with direct. Let's get you settled, he said, gesturing toward the transport that would take them to their quarters. Fair warning, Velari architecture takes some getting used to. Gravity isn't always where you expect it to be. The integration process was predictably rocky. The human quarters were in the same district as Adrian's workshop, close enough for easy collaboration, but separate enough to provide privacy. Adrian had overseen the modifications himself, installing human standard gravity fields and atmospheric controls. But no amount of modification could make alien architecture feel like home. The walls keep moving, Morrison complained on the third day, looking haggard. I swear my bathroom was on the left yesterday. Adaptive architecture, Adrian explained. The building learns your patterns and adjusts to optimize your living space. It's trying to help. It's trying to drive me insane, Morrison muttered. Give it a week, Adrian advised. And stop fighting it. The more you resist, the more it tries to accommodate, which makes things worse. Trust the building. Trust the building, Morrison repeated. Christ, what have I signed up for? But Park had taken to the environment like a fish to water. Adrian found him in the workshop at all hours, studying Velari technology with an enthusiasm that bordered on obsession. This is impossible, Park said during one late-night session, gesturing at a power distribution node. The energy patterns are non-linear, but somehow they're more efficient than linear transmission. It's like they're convincing electrons to take shortcuts. That's exactly what they're doing, Adrian confirmed. Velari technology doesn't force. It persuades. Once you understand that principle, everything else starts making sense. But how? Park demanded. What's the mechanism? Adrian held up his scarred hand, watching the pattern shift. Honestly, I understand it, but can't fully explain it. The blade gave me the knowledge, but it's like knowing how to ride a bicycle without being able to explain balance. That's frustrating, Park said. That's opportunity, Adrian corrected. We figure out the why together. Human analysis. Velari intuition. Build something neither could create alone. The real test came when Kale arrived for inspection. The general had been formally polite since the council meeting, but Adrian knew he was waiting for the humans to fail, to prove his concerns justified. Your students are disrupting the power grid, Kale announced, finding Adrian in the workshop. Define disrupting, Adrian said, not looking up from the converter he was calibrating. Random fluctuations in sectors 7 through 12. The maintenance crews are complaining. Adrian sighed. Park's probably trying to run comparative analysis on the distribution nodes. I'll talk to him about timing his experiments better. This is exactly what I warned about, Kale said. Humans don't understand our technology. They poke and prod without considering consequences. Like Velari understood human technology when they shot down my ship, Adrian asked mildly. Kale's expression darkened. That was military action. That was assumption, Adrian corrected. You assumed our ship was a threat because you didn't understand our approach vectors. Just like Park assumes he can analyze your power grid using human methodologies. Both mistakes. Both correctable. You defend them. I teach them. There's a difference. Adrian finally looked up. Give me time. General, real change doesn't happen in days or weeks. It happens in months and years, built on a foundation of mistakes and learning. Time for more incidents, more disruptions. Time for understanding. Adrian stood, facing the general directly. You know what your real problem is. You're afraid they'll succeed. That humans will learn to work with your technology, will bring their own innovations. You're afraid of becoming obsolete. I fear for our culture, Kale said stiffly. Our identity. Culture isn't preserved by isolation, Adrian said. It's strengthened by contact, by testing itself against new ideas, and keeping what works while adapting what doesn't. Philosophy from an engineer, experience from someone who's lived both sides. Adrian gestured to his workshop, where human and Veilari tools sat side by side. I'm still human in how I think, still Veilari in how I perceive. Neither cancels out the other. They enhance. Kale was quiet for a long moment. Then, the power fluctuations are disrupting residential sectors. Fix it. He left without another word, but Adrian counted it as progress. The general hadn't demanded the humans leave, just that they be more careful. It was a start. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Hawkins, the xenobiologist, had been the quietest of the group, spending most of her time observing rather than experimenting. Adrian found her one evening in the biolabs, staring at a holographic display of cellular structures. These aren't possible, she said without preamble. Adrian looked at the display Veilari tissue samples, their cellular structure displayed in exquisite detail. What's impossible about them? The energy efficiency, the cellular respiration rate, the way they process radiation. She turned to him, eyes bright with discovery. Veilari cells are about 30% more efficient than human cells at energy conversion. But the mechanism, it's not chemical. It's something else. Quantum biological processes, Adrian said, recognizing the patterns. They evolved in a system with binary suns and higher background radiation. Their biology adapted by developing quantum coherence at the cellular level. That's science fiction, Hawkins protested. That's your colleague, Adrian said, pointing to Rin, who was practicing combat forms in the adjacent training hall. Science fact. The question is, can we learn from it? Hawkins's expression shifted from skepticism to hunger. The medical applications alone, if we could induce similar efficiency in human cells. Carefully, Adrian warned. Very carefully. I'm living proof of what happens when human biology meets Veilari technology without proper preparation. But you survived, Hawkins pointed out. Changed, but functional. Maybe even improved in some ways. Lucky, Adrian corrected. I got very, very lucky. And I had the blade guiding the process. He showed her his scarred hands. This isn't a path others should follow, but understanding the principles. That's different. Within a week, Hawkins had made more progress in understanding Veilari biology than previous human scientists had made in decades. She worked with Veilari healers, sharing knowledge, building bridges of understanding one cell at a time. Santos proved equally adaptable, though in different ways. The team lead spent her time not in labs, but in meetings, learning Veilari social structures, building relationships. Adrian found her one afternoon sharing tea with Thara, the young counselor who'd supported him. You're not what I expected from Earth scientists, Thara was saying. Oh, Santos sipped her tea carefully. Veilari formal tea ceremony involved temperatures that could burn human tongues. What did you expect? Arrogance, demands, the assumption that your way is the only way. I'm too old for that nonsense, Santos said bluntly. At my age, you learn that being right is less important than being effective, and effectiveness requires understanding, not dominance. Adrian smiled, moving on without interrupting. Santos understood something crucial. Technology exchange wasn't just about science. It was about trust. Morrison struggled the most. The materials scientist approached everything with rigid methodology that clashed with Veilari intuitive design. Adrian found him one night in the workshop, surrounded by failed experiments, looking ready to throw something. It doesn't make sense, Morrison said. The crystal lattices are unstable. They should shatter under stress. But they get stronger instead. Stop thinking like a human, Adrian advised. I am human. Exactly the problem. Adrian picked up one of Morrison's samples, a failed attempt at recreating Veilari hull plating. You're trying to force Earth understanding onto alien materials, like trying to make water flow uphill because that's what your equations say should happen. Then how do I understand it? Adrian considered, then made a decision. Come with me. He led Morrison to the city's edge, where the crystal spires gave way to desert. The binary suns were setting, painting the sky in impossible colors. Adrian sat on an outcropping of rock, gesturing for Morrison to join him. What do you see? Adrian asked. Desert, rocks. Two suns that shouldn't be able to support Earth-like life, but somehow do. I see a system in harmony, Adrian said. The binary suns create complex tidal stresses. The desert absorbs and redistributes heat in patterns that moderate temperature. The rocks aren't just rocks, they're part of a mineral cycle that includes the city's living architecture. He turned to Morrison. Everything here is connected. Nothing exists in isolation. That's very zen. But how does it help me understand materials science? Because Veilari materials aren't isolated substances, Adrian explained. They're components in a larger system. That hull plating you're trying to recreate. It doesn't work alone. It needs to be connected to power systems, to other materials, to the ship's quasi-consciousness. It's not just matter, it's part of a relationship. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. That's completely counter to everything I was taught. Welcome to interstellar science, Adrian said, where half of what you know is wrong, and the other half is incomplete. How do you stand it? Morrison asked. The constant, not knowing. Adrian thought of the blade, of the moment it had chosen him, of all the impossible things that had happened since. You learn to find joy in discovery, in being wrong because it means you get to learn something new. He smiled. Besides, certainty is overrated. It's the questions that make life interesting. Progress came in fits and starts. Park successfully created a hybrid power cell that combined human robustness with Veilari efficiency. Hawkins developed a treatment protocol that could enhance human cellular efficiency by 5%, not much, but a beginning. Santos negotiated cultural exchange protocols that both sides could accept. Even Morrison eventually had his breakthrough, creating a composite material that exhibited properties of both human and Veilari design philosophy. It wasn't as strong as pure Veilari hull plating, but it could be manufactured using human techniques, a crucial bridge technology. But success brought new challenges. Captain Stone submitted her first report, and while Adrian wasn't privy to its contents, the increased communication traffic from Earth suggested intense debate. Some factions wanted to accelerate the program. Others wanted to shut it down. They're scared, Stone told him one evening, finding him on the palace's observation deck. Of failure. Of success. She joined him at the railing, looking out over the city. Every advancement your team makes is proof that our understanding of the universe is incomplete. That's threatening to people who've built careers on certainty. And you, Adrian asked, what do you tell them? The truth. That we're standing at the edge of a new age? That the choice isn't whether to step forward, but how? She paused. I also tell them about you? Me, the engineer who touched an alien artifact and survived, who built bridges between species, who chose transformation over safety. She smiled slightly. You're either humanity's greatest cautionary tale or our brightest hope. Why not both? Adrian asked. Because that would require nuanced thinking, and military reports prefer clear categories. Her expression grew serious. There are those on Earth who see you as contaminated, who think your loyalty to humanity is compromised. Adrian felt the circuit scars tingle, responding to his emotional state. Maybe it is. Maybe loyalty to one species is too small a concept now. Dangerous thinking. Necessary thinking. Adrian turned to face her. Captain, we're not alone in the universe. We can't pretend we are. We can either engage with other species as partners, or face them as enemies. I know which future I prefer. The generals prefer enemies, Stone said. Enemies are simple. Partners are complicated. Then maybe we need new generals. Stone actually laughed. Spoken like someone who's never dealt with military bureaucracy. Change comes slowly, coal, glacially. Glaciers carved continents, Adrian pointed out. Slow doesn't mean ineffective. The real test came 6 months into the program. A crisis in the outer system, a mining station's power core failing, threatening 500 lives. Velari rescue ships were too far away. Human vessels were closer, but lacked the technology to stabilize a quantum cascade failure. We need hybrid tech, Kaya said, bursting into the workshop where Adrian was reviewing designs with his team. Something that can interface with our systems, but work with human equipment. Adrian looked at his team. Months of work, theoretical knowledge, untested prototypes. Now lives hung in the balance. Park, your hybrid power cells, can they handle quantum resonance? Adrian asked. In theory, we've never tested at that scale. Morrison, your composite materials radiation resistance. Should hold, but no buts. Just best estimates. Adrian was already moving, pulling up schematics. Hawkins, biological risks to mixed crews. Manageable with proper shielding. Santos, I'll coordinate with the council. Get clearances. Smooth objections. Stone, the captain straightened. I'll prep a human vessel for hybrid modifications. We'll need military precision for this. Adrian felt a surge of pride. His team, human and Velari, working together, responding to crisis without hesitation. This was what he'd envisioned. Let's save some lives, he said. The next 18 hours blurred together. Adrian's team worked alongside Velari engineers, modifying a human rescue vessel with hybrid technology. Park's power cells integrated with Velari control systems. Morrison's materials reinforced critical sections. Hawkins ensured biological compatibility. Adrian found himself at the center, translating between teams, solving problems as they arose. The circuit scars on his hands glowed constantly. His hybrid nature, allowing him to bridge gaps others couldn't see. Interface mismatch in Sector 3, someone called out. Reroute through the secondary matrix. Adrian responded, without looking up. Use harmonic resonance to smooth the transition. Power fluctuations in the hybrid cells. Expected. They're adapting to Velari frequencies. Give them 30 seconds to stabilize. Problem after problem. Solution after solution. And through it all, Adrian felt something he hadn't experienced since touching the blade. Perfect clarity of purpose. This was what he was meant to do. Not choose sides, but build bridges. Not preserve the past, but create the future. The modified ship launched on schedule. Adrian watched from the command center as it approached the failing mining station. Human pilots flying with Velari navigation. Earth robustness powered by alien elegance. Two civilizations' knowledge merged into something new. Docking successful, came the report. Beginning power transfer. Tense minutes passed. Then cascade halted. Core stabilizing. Evacuation beginning. The command center erupted in celebration. Humans and Velari embracing. Boundaries forgotten in shared success. Adrian felt hands clapping his shoulders. Voices offering congratulations in multiple languages. But he barely heard them. His attention was fixed on the monitors, showing the hybrid ship performing flawlessly. Proof of concept. Evidence that cooperation wasn't just possible, but necessary. Well done, Solara said quietly beside him. He hadn't heard her approach, but her presence was unmistakable, that mix of ozone and flowers, power and grace. Team effort, Adrian said automatically. Led by you, she studied the celebrating crowd. This is what you envisioned, isn't it? Not just technology exchange, but true integration. It's a start, Adrian admitted. 6 months to save one station. We need to do better. Always the engineer, Solara said with gentle amusement. Never satisfied with success. Success is just failure that hasn't happened yet, Adrian quoted. My first boss told me that. Paranoid man. But he kept his ships flying. And you keep civilizations connecting. Solara's expression grew serious. The council meets tomorrow. What happened today will be discussed. There are those who see it as validation of your vision, and others who see it as proof that humans are learning too much too fast. Politics is complex, Solara said diplomatically. Politics is fear dressed in formal robes, Adrian countered. But I understand. Change is terrifying, especially when you can't control its direction. Can you control its direction? Adrian thought of his team, of the connections forming, of the future taking shape one innovation at a time. No, but I can influence it, guide it, help it grow in healthy directions. Like an engineer tending a machine, like a gardener tending a garden. You can't make plants grow, but you can create conditions where growth happens naturally. Solara smiled. You've become philosophical in your transformation. I've become realistic, Adrian corrected. Grand visions are easy. Implementation is hard. But today, he gestured to the celebration. Today, we proved it's possible. The party continued late into the night. Adrian found himself pulled into conversations, asked to explain techniques, to share stories. Park got drunk on Velari wine and tried to explain quantum theory through interpretive dance. Morrison discovered he actually liked Velari food once he stopped analyzing its molecular structure. Hawkins compared notes with healers, finding common ground in their dedication to preserving life. Even Stone relaxed, sharing war stories with Kale and his warriors. Military minds finding kinship across species lines. Adrian watched it all from the edges, tired but satisfied. This was what the blade had shown him was possible, not conquest or submission, but synthesis. Two species learning from each other, growing together, building something neither could achieve alone. You look contemplative, Santos said, joining him in his quiet corner. Thinking about the future, Adrian admitted. And it's going to be messy, he said. Complicated, full of setbacks and misunderstandings and probably a few disasters. But, Adrian smiled, but it's going to be magnificent. Santos raised her glass filled with water, because she'd learned her lesson about Velari wine. To magnificent messes. To building bridges, Adrian countered, touching his glass to hers. The party swirled on around them, humans and Velari celebrating together. Not perfect, not without friction, but real. A beginning. Adrian felt the circuit scars on his hands pulse gently, no longer painful, but part of him now. The blade had marked him, changed him, set him on this path. But the path itself, that was his to walk. And he had so much further to go.